Okay, so tonight we're doing something a little different. I don't want to give a generic talk about AI. I do not want to throw around hype words. I don't want to act like this is just another trend conversation. I want to walk through a live case study based on something I experienced in person. Okay. So yesterday I had the opportunity to speak at the Parent Summit in Paterson, New Jersey. And what stood out to me was not just that people were curious about AI. What stood out to me was the emotional weight around it, the hesitation, the caution, the tension. The curiosity was there, but the fear was there too. And that is what I want to unpack tonight. So this is not going to be a conversation about whether AI is all good or all bad, because that's too shallow. And honestly, it's not going to be useful. It's not useful. It wasn't useful for me to take that stance yesterday when I was having a conversation with the attendees, and it's not going to be useful in this conversation that I'm having live. And this is going to be a conversation about what people are really afraid of when it comes to AI, why that fear makes sense, and what that fear may quietly be costing people in business and visibility, learning, and opportunities. So tonight I'm using what happened at the event as the source material. This is a live case study. And these were real conversations with real people, and they revealed something important to me. A lot of people are not refusing to engage with AI because they are lazy. They are not refusing because they are not intelligent. They are not refusing because they do not see the usefulness. In many cases, they are refusing because they are afraid of what it might expose, what it might replace, and what it might take, or what it might allow. And I think that makes sense. I think all of that matters. Because if fear is the real barrier, then the conversation cannot just be about features and tools. It has to be about trust. It has to be about boundaries. It has to be about control. It has to be about discernment. And it also has to be about the cost of standing still while the world keeps moving. So that is where I want to start tonight. I'm going to walk through this in sections. And as I do, if anyone wants to jump in after a section and share what they are seeing in their own field, their own work, or their own experience, I want this room to have space for that. This is structured, but it's still live. So if you want to add to it, you will have room to do that. So let me begin with what I actually experienced at the event, because that is the doorway into everything else. At the Parent Summit, I had several conversations, but there were 3 people in particular who really stayed with me. One was a commercial banker, and the other 2 were women from completely different stages of life and business. One was an interior designer with real experience, real creative talent, and an existing client base. The other was a young college student in her first year studying marketing. Now, on the surface, those people have different lives, different levels of experience, different industries, and different reasons for even thinking about AI. But what connected them all was that AI brought people into a conversation about usefulness and risk at the same time. Now, stick with me here. The commercial banker did not carry the same emotional resistance. He works close to risk, He understands fraud. He understands that bad actors are constantly evolving. He understands that systems are always being tested. And because of that, he did not seem shocked by the existence of AI risk. To him, it was part of the broader reality of an already changing environment. He understood that institutions are adapting because they have to. Then I spoke with the interior designer. She was thoughtful, talented, experienced, and practical. She was not anti-AI. In fact, she could clearly see how useful it could be, especially for marketing, content, workflow, and building new income streams as she gets older. She already uses ChatGPT in some ways. So again, the issue was not disinterest. The issue was not ignorance. The issue was fear. Her identity had been stolen before. That experience shaped how she moves now. It shaped what she trusts. It shaped what she allows. So even though she can see the benefit, there is still a protective wall there. Then there was the younger woman, the marketing student. She is at the beginning of a field where AI is not optional. It is not background noise. It is becoming part of the terrain itself. For someone like her, documenting her journey, sharing her voice, building her ideas, and learning these tools early could be a huge advantage. But what she expressed was fear around her voice, her likeness, and her digital presence being taken or misused. Again, not a lack of intelligence, not a lack of vision, fear. And this is what stood out to me. Not that people think AI is useless, not that people are too stubborn to learn, but that fear is sitting right beside opportunity. And if we do not understand that, then we are going to misread what is happening in the market. We are going to think people need more information when sometimes what they really need is a framework for engaging carefully without feeling reckless. And that is a different problem. Because when somebody is scared, you cannot just hand them a tool and call that empowerment. You have to address what they believe the tool might cost them. And that is what I saw in real time. I saw capable people who could clearly benefit from learning more, but who were still emotionally negotiating with risk. That is what tonight is really about. So, one of the biggest mistakes that in my opinion, that people make in conversations about AI is assuming that hesitation means a lack of interest. And that is not always true. And that was not true for what I experienced yesterday, because the people that actually wanted to learn about AI and pick my brain, they came to my classroom and they were in my classroom the whole time. And they were talking to me. And one of them, the only reason why she even showed up at the event was to get more information about AI. So it's not about whether people are interested or not. I think that people want to learn about AI, but they also want to be able to trust the person that they're learning from, because it's so many. I know that there are people out there that are using it in a way that might not be with integrity, right? And so people are interested, but they're still afraid, right? They see the value, they're still afraid. And a person could, it's like they want to learn, but they they still feel like they have to hold themselves back because they don't have all the information. And that matters because if we misdiagnose the barrier that, and I know that Chadira is in business, and probably whoever else is going to listen to this, you're in business. And if you're listening to this, you're utilizing AI some type of way, or you want to. So you can also diagnose yourself. If you misdiagnose why you're not, like what's hindering you, or that barrier that's keeping you from moving forward with learning about AI, or if you misdiagnose why your clients have a barrier with using specific AI tools that you present to them, then you won't be able to give them the proper solution. And if I think that the problem is that someone is lazy and I talk to them that way, that doesn't mean that they're lazy. It could mean that I actually misdiagnosed them, right? If I think the problem is that someone is slow or behind, then I probably should talk to them in a different way. But if the problem is fear, then the conversation has to shift, right? Because if they're lazy, then you are going to talk to them one way. But sometimes they're not lazy. So we have to figure out what is the root issue with this person using the tools that we present to them, right? They came to me to dispel the fear around using it that they carry. Because if the fear is not solved, then they'll just stay stuck. And you can't solve it with hype. And I was like, wow, fear is not solved by telling people that everyone else is doing it. I couldn't resolve their fear by pretending that there was no risk, even with the commercial banker in the room with us. And he tried to dispel the fear. He gave the examples of what they're doing in commercial banking to protect the people. And that didn't matter. They still had the fear, because their fears needed to be met honestly. And I think a lot of AI conversations right now are failing because they are trying to rush past the emotional reality. People keep leading with speed, efficiency, automation, scale, growth, shortcuts, and content value. But some of the people listening are thinking something very different. They are thinking, what happens to my information? What happens to my likeness? What happens to my work? What happens to my thinking? What happens if I trust the wrong platform, the wrong person? What happens if I become too dependent on it? What happens if this opens a door that I cannot close? And those are real questions. And the truth is, nobody feels that kind of tension. They do not need a sales pitch. They need a thoughtful conversation. And this is especially important in business because the outside world may interpret hesitation as resistance. That's what I did. I had to sit with it. When what is really happening around this fear is actually risk evaluation. Because some people are not dragging their feet because they do not want progress. They are dragging their feet because they do not feel emotionally or strategically safe yet. And honestly, that is not irrational. And I have a story about that because I actually had an opportunity to get a glimpse of what AI or how AI was being used maybe 15 years ago. Okay? And I went the other way. It was maybe 15 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that. I got a glimpse of AI in real life and what it could do for me in business. And at that time, I had my own restaurant. And I went the other way because I wasn't ready. And now I know what it is. It's fear that they're feeling. Yeah, I felt that a long time ago. But I was surprised to see it in such a young woman that basically grew up in the computer age. Or, yeah, she grew up during the computer age. I think she's not even a millennial. She's like, what is that? Gen X, I'm X, Z, Gen Z, I guess that she is. I guess she's Gen Z. And this becomes a problem when that fear stays unexamined, as Shadira mentioned earlier, for so long that it becomes a permanent block. And that is when caution turns into paralysis. That is when discernment turns into avoidance. That is when the desire to stay safe starts quietly producing a different kind of vulnerability. Because now you are not learning. You're not adapting. You're not even experimenting, as Shadira mentioned earlier. You're not building familiarity and not increasing your ability to make informed decisions. So when I say the real barrier is fear, I am not saying fear is silly. I'm saying fear is powerful enough to shape behavior. And if we do not name it clearly, then we miss the entire point. And a lot of people are not behind because they lack access. They are behind because they do not trust what participation might require from them. And that is a completely different conversation. And when I looked at those live conversations yesterday, that is exactly what I saw. Not people who could not understand, people who were still trying to decide whether engagement was worth the emotional and practical risk. And that is a very important distinction, especially for anyone teaching, selling, advising, or building around AI. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go on to my next point. And so I'm going to refer back to the event again, all right? Because like I said, to me, when I was at this event, it was clear to me that the people do not all fear AI in the same exact way, right? Okay? Everybody didn't have the same fears. Even the commercial banker mentioned that only in 2025, and now he has been in the industry for, I think, 20 plus years. He has been in commercial banking, and he just now in 2025 or in 2026, just for reference, he just now added his specific cards to his phone. I've been using Apple products ever since the iPod, right? Because I love music. So when they came out with the phone, and then you could pay with your phone, all my cards were on there, right? So I use that actively. Now this is a commercial banker. He just now added his cards to his phone. He's just now adding it, and I thought that was so intriguing to me because I was like, you're already in banking. He already is in banking, but he still had fears behind it, and he was able to deal with those fears. But he did mention that, you know what? Not all my cards are on there. Just specific cards. I had specific cards on there. And he's had some issues. I've had issues, but I didn't have anything that deterred me from continuing to use it. Like, it was like, oh, okay, yes, all right. Somebody tried to do a little scam move on me. It got fixed. It got fixed. The banks fixed it, and I was good. I kept moving. It didn't stop me from using Apple Pay. It doesn't stop me from using Apple Pay. And so different people have different levels of fear based on their life experience, right? Based on their field, right? Based on their age and their exposure, their responsibilities, and the kinds of harm they have already experienced. So the interior designer was not afraid in the same way as the college student. And the college student was not afraid in the same way as the banker. And the banker was not looking at risk from the same emotional distance as the two women were. And that tells us something, that fear is not one size fits all. And I'm so happy that Alan is on here because he probably could speak more to this. For one person, the fear may be identity theft because they have already lived through it. And then for another person, the fear may be likeness misuse because they are young enough to know, their whole public identity could unfold online. And for someone else, the fear may be intellectual dependence. They may worry that the more they use AI, the less they trust their own mind. And then furthermore, for someone else, the fear may be professional relevance. And that's important. That's an important one because I see that on LinkedIn a lot. They may be wondering whether learning this tool empowers them or slowly trains them to become more replaceable. And all of those are different fears. So if someone wants to talk intelligently about AI adoption, they cannot just talk about AI. They have to talk about the people. They have to talk about lived experience because lived experience determines what risk feels like. The person who has never had their identity stolen is not entering the conversation from the same place as the person who has. The person who grew up documenting everything online may not feel the same way as the person who values privacy deeply. The person who works in compliance or banking may have a more system-based view of risk, while a creative or independent business owner may feel the risk in a more personal or exposed way. And this is why blanket language fails. When people say, do not worry, AI is just a tool, that may sound logical, but it is incomplete. A tool still enters a life. A tool still enters a business. A tool still enters a nervous system. A tool still enters a trust relationship. And that means the emotional response to the tool matters. And this is also why I think the conversation around AI needs more maturity, not less enthusiasm necessarily, but more maturity, as Alan said, more ability to hold the complexities around gathering information using AI, more ability to say, yes, there are real opportunities here, and yes, there are real fears here as well. And both can be true at the same time. And when I looked at those women yesterday, what I saw was not weakness. I saw caution shaped by experience and vulnerability that deserves seriousness. But I also saw potential. I saw people who could use these tools meaningfully if they felt more grounded in how to approach them. And I'm happy that there are companies out there like Allen's company, and some of the other ones that I learned about as well, through the banker. That is the opportunity inside this whole topic, that not forcing people past their concerns, but helping them develop a better relationship with the tools. And that is completely different. That's a different kind of leadership, right? So now the next point, this is really important, and it is where I think a lot of people become uncomfortable, right? Avoiding AI completely does not automatically make you safe. And I touched a little bit on it yesterday at the event, and then I pulled back because I was like, I'm touching I was striking nerves. So now I feel like I could say it now a little bit more confidently. It may make you feel, all right, avoiding AI may make you feel safer. It could reduce some forms of exposure, and it may give you more emotional distance from the tools, but it does not place you outside of the digital environment that we are already living in. And that is the part people need to be honest about as well. So at the event, one of the points that I brought up was that during the pandemic, people were walking around masked up, and facial recognition systems could still work with partial data. And they demonstrated it to us in real life. And in many cases, the world had already shifted into forms of digital recognition, data use, and biometric interaction that people were participating in, whether they were actively thinking about it or not, and they strategically did it, right? Because the whole world has stopped. You couldn't even open up your phone, right? They had already programmed us. They had already set it up this way. You couldn't even open up your phone without them. They looked at your retinas. They didn't even need your face. All they needed was your eyeballs. All right? And that does not mean that people should, get distraught about it, right? No, it does not mean that people should stop protecting themselves either. It means people should stop imagining that total avoidance equals total protection, because that is a blemished view, or premise, should I say, a blemished premise of what's going on here. Because sometimes avoidance creates an illusion of safety while leaving a person underinformed. I was getting ready to say, like, you living a mediocre life, but that's not, I shouldn't say that. It's leaving a person underinformed or underprepared and less able to navigate what is already here. And that matters in business too. If you avoid learning how these systems work at all, then you may not recognize risk when it shows up. You may not know which tools are safer and which ones are careless. You may not understand what permissions you are granting. You may not know how to set boundaries around your information. You may not know how to create practical internal rules for your own use. Something that Alan mentioned, but he was speaking like if you're actually creating the tool. And you may end up more vulnerable because your fear kept you from developing literacy. And that is a paradox. Because sometimes the thing people think is protecting them is also preventing them from becoming more informed and more capable. Again, I'm not advocating reckless use. I am not telling people to throw their information into every platform. I'm saying that informed engagement is often stronger than blind avoidance. The same way financial literacy is stronger than simply being afraid of money. The same way digital literacy is stronger than just distrusting the internet. The same way media literacy is stronger than simply saying everything online is fake. A person who understands more can usually protect themselves better than a person who only pulls away. And this matters for the future because AI is not staying in the side corner somewhere. It is moving into search, communication, marketing, customer service, workflows, education, banking, creative work, and everyday business processes. So if a person refuses to learn anything at all, they may feel principled in the moment, but over time, it can become its own disadvantage. This is the part I think we need to talk about more honestly, because there is a difference between caution and disengagement. And I think a lot of people are standing in disengagement while calling it caution. So I'm going to give an example of one way that I use it is I might go into my kitchen, right? Because I'm a foodie girl, right? I like to eat, y'all. So I might go into my kitchen and open up my refrigerator and I'll take a picture of what's in my refrigerator and I'll take a picture of what I have in my cabinet and then I'll ask AI, what can I cook? And it'll list everything that I have in images, and then it'll tell me exactly what I can cook, right? I use AI that way. I use AI to help me with my schedule. So these are like some of the practical ways. I use AI to help me to organize my finances as well. Another way that I was able to use AI was I actually used AI to not just create a YouTube channel, but create music, right? So I wrote some lyrics to a song, and then I took those lyrics and I uploaded to a music site, and that music site utilizes AI, and it actually sang the song for me. And then I took those songs and I published them, right? I published them, I got them released. And now they're on just about any streaming platform that you could think about. If you type in Tiffany Satchel, my music will come up. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, and all of them. Like any streaming platform that you could think of. And now I'm creating legacy wealth, right? For not just for me, but for my children and their children, because we know how music works. And then now I'm using AI to actually actively, in real time, build a AI consulting business, right? Because I want to help people with AI. Now, Alan's a little bit more techie than I am, right? But I'm starting to get into the techie side because I am actively taking courses to achieve certification in working with AI, right? So I just want to just add that. Okay, so now we got through that. And now I want to talk about what this fear or this barrier of fear that people are experiencing or maybe demonstrating, right? To like our clients may be demonstrating to us. what is costing them professionally? All right, because this is basically the heart of the conversation for me. What is fear around AI actually costing the people? Because 15 years ago, it costed me having to still work in 9 to 5, because the woman that introduced it to me 15 years ago, I turned my head. So what did it do? 15 years later, I'm still working a 9 to 5. When I could have probably, by this time, probably already been retired, you know? So once we move past the emotional reaction, we have to look at the practical consequences. And for some people, fear is costing them time. It costed me time. And they're doing everything the hard way. Not because every hard way is noble either, but because they have ruled out useful support before they have even built a framework for safe use. Something that Chajera talked about, right? Something that you mentioned. They haven't built the framework for safe utilization of the AI tools that are available to them. And then for some people, fear is costing them clarity. They are not experiencing, they're not experimenting enough. Something else that Chadira mentioned. They're not experimenting enough to see where AI can help with brainstorming, outlining, workflow, editing, customer communication, planning, or research support. And for some people, fear is costing them visibility. They know they need to market more, write more, explain more, show up more, and document their ideas more. But they are still frozen around the tools that could help them reduce friction and increase output. For some people, fear is costing them learning. They are not giving themselves room to build literacy, which means they remain dependent on rumors, assumptions, and broad cultural anxiety rather than actual understanding. Like what Alan mentioned before, if I keep using AI, I'm gonna get stupid. Are you serious? And those wasn't his exact words, but that's basically what I have seen on YouTube. I have seen people that are dominating in the industry actually tell people, if you keep on using AI, you're just going to get stupid. What? And all because they don't want you. And that's the thing. They don't want you to use AI. They want you to stay stupid. They know that you're not going to get stupider if you keep using AI. They're using AI. They just don't want to tell you that they're using AI. But that's a whole nother conversation. For some people, fear is costing them confidence. So aside from not giving themselves the room to build literacy, they remain dependent on the rumors. They remain dependent on the assumptions and the broad cultural anxiety rather than actual understanding. Because when everyone else seems to be moving and you're still standing on the edge trying to decide whether the whole thing is dangerous, you start to feel like you're behind, even if you're smart, even if you're capable, even if you're talented. And then we have people out there who are intentional about placing people in those positions, right? And that's another conversation. But in business, that matters a lot. And that's why we're having this conversation right now. Because I see it. I see it. The interior designer that I spoke with is a perfect example. She already has credibility. She already has talent. She already has referrals. Her issue is not whether she has something valuable, because she is very valuable. Her issue is whether she can build on that value in a changing digital environment without feeling like she is exposing herself to more risk, and then she can tolerate. And that is a serious business question. And now let's talk about the student, because she's entering marketing at the same time when literacy around these tools could become a real competitive advantage. But if fear keeps her from documenting, experimenting, and learning, she may lose time she cannot get back. And not because she lacks intelligence, because this woman is a very intelligent young lady. Because fear delayed her practice. And that is what I mean when I say fear may be costly. Not because fear makes people foolish, but because fear can quietly interrupt adaptation. And that interruption has consequences. Sometimes the cost is missed opportunity. Sometimes the cost is slower growth. Sometimes the cost is weaker visibility. Sometimes the cost is dependence on outdated workflows. Sometimes the cost is simply staying mentally behind the change long after the change has already arrived. And I think we have to be mature enough to say that out loud without mocking people for being careful. That's the balance. Respect the fear, as Alan said earlier, right? Respect the fear, but also tell the truth about the cost, right? When he said that he thought that I was tiptoeing around it, no. That's why we're having this conversation. I had to address it. And I had to say, yeah, I can relate. Because there was a time when I was like that. Because if we only validate fear, we keep people comfortable. And if we only dismiss fear, we lose their trust. But if we can hold both, then we can actually help people move. All right, so now we're going to talk about what responsible AI use can look like. That's what we're going to talk about. If the answer is not reckless adoption and the answer is not complete avoidance, then what does a better path look like? And to me, it looks like responsible use, right? Responsible use means learning without surrendering your judgment. It means experimenting without adopting caution. Without abandoning caution. I don't know why I said without adopting caution. Reckless. That would be reckless. It means experimenting without abandoning caution. It means understanding that a tool can help you without becoming your brain. Right? People think, oh, if I use AI, I'm going to get stupid. And that's like the least. That's like the least thing that could happen. It means understanding that a tool can help you without becoming your brain. That's what it means. It means developing boundaries, not just opinions. And that is what I think people need more of. Not just motivation to use AI, not just warnings about AI, frameworks, systems, structure. For example, Responsible use might mean deciding what kinds of information you will never enter into a tool, as Alan explained earlier. You have to set up boundaries where if this happens, this will not happen. This is the only thing that's going to happen. And it might mean separating brainstorming from sensitive business data. It might mean using AI for outlines, idea generation, summaries, and first draft support while still requiring your own thinking, your own editing, and your own discernment. And me and my boyfriend, we have conversations about it all the time. When I utilize ChatGPT or Claude AI, and I don't agree with what they say, and my boyfriend goes, "Well, then don't use it." As he said that, he was like, "Well, Tiffany, don't use it." And I'm like, "You're right." But I go, "Oh yeah, that's smarter." He was like, "Tiffany, it's just a support tool. Don't use it. You don't like what they're saying? Don't use it. Use your own brain, right? Use your own inner guidance system. We have a nervous system that helps us. So it might mean learning the platform policies before using your voice or image features, right? As these young ladies, they don't use that type of stuff in their everyday life, as most of us do, as most of the collective does, as most of us that are part of the matrix, because we all are part of the matrix, but there are some people within the matrix that don't use those features. And it might mean treating these tools as assistants, not authorities, right? We have to remain the authority. Don't allow these tools to become the authority. Something that my boyfriend was actually saying to me without actually saying it like that, right? That's what he was saying, like, "No, Tiffany, you're the authority." And that distinction matters a lot. So the healthiest way to engage AI, in my opinion, right, this is just my opinion, is not to ask it to become your mind. It is to ask it to support your process. You still have to think. You still have to judge. You still have to verify. You still have to decide what aligns with your standards, your ethics, your business, and your comfort level. That is the kind of conversation I want more people to have. Because I think a lot of the fear people have comes from feeling like engaging with AI means giving up something essential, like your privacy, your creativity, your control, your intelligence, your originality. But responsible use does not require that. What it requires is maturity. And honestly, this is where leadership comes in. Whether you are a teacher, a consultant, a student, creative, business owner, or executive, part of the assignment now is learning how to approach these tools in a way that is thoughtful enough to protect people and practical enough to prepare them. And this is the real opportunity, not blind adoption, not blind rejection, thoughtful adaptation. And if more people had that framework, I think a lot of the emotional charge around AI would start to soften. Because now the conversation is no longer, should I give my whole self over to this or avoid it forever? Now the conversation becomes, how do I engage this in a way that is intelligent, bounded, and useful? That is a much better question. And I think if people can start asking better questions, they can start building a healthier relationship with the tools and a more realistic understanding of the risks. So that is where I land. Yes, the fear is real. Yes, the concerns are real. Yes, the caution is justified. But fear should not be the only thing making the decision. So I'm going to close out with this. What I hope that people take from tonight, the conversation around AI has to grow up. It has to become more human and more honest and more useful. We have to stop pretending every hesitant person is closed-minded. We have to stop pretending every early adopter is reckless. And we have to stop flattening this into hype on one side and fear on the other. Real people are trying to figure out how to navigate change while protecting what matters to them. And that is what I saw at the Parent Summit. I saw intelligence, I saw caution, I saw curiosity, I saw fear, I saw potential. And I saw a need for better conversations. And that is why I wanted to bring this here tonight. Because I think a lot of people are closer to engaging these tools than we realize. They are not always rejecting the future. Sometimes they are standing at the edge of it, trying to determine whether they can trust the ground beneath them. And that deserves respect. But it also deserves challenge. Because if fear becomes the permanent decision maker, then people may lose more than they protect. They may lose time. They may lose learning. They may lose visibility. They may lose momentum. They may lose the chance to build a more informed, more resilient, more adaptive relationship with the world they are already living in. So my position is this. Interrogate the fear. Do not worship the fear, but learn carefully. Use discernment, build boundaries, stay thoughtful, stay human, and do not let unexamined fear quietly lock you out of skills, tools, and opportunities you may need in the future. So thank you, everyone who joined the room tonight. Thank you to everyone who added their perspective. And thank you for letting me turn a real experience into a real conversation. This was what fear of AI is really costing people. I appreciate you all. And good night. I'll see you on the next space.